This is the Real Estate Connect podcast, bringing you knowledge on all things real estate, from buying to selling to investing. No topic will be left untouched. If you're a first-time home buyer, just have an interest in real estate, or a question that needs to be answered, you're guaranteed to find it in one of our episodes. Licensed in both Georgia and Illinois, a previous team leader for Keller Williams Realty, and currently the owner of Maison Fleur Realty Group, with locations in Chicago and Atlanta. Here's your host, the Real Estate Connect herself, Sharina Flowers.
Today we have a wonderful guest, Miss Tiffani Hawes, Esquire of the Hawes Law Firm, will be joining us today and schooling us on why you need a real estate attorney. Welcome, Tiffani.
Welcome. Thank you for having me, Sharina.
No problem. How about you tell our guests a little bit about yourself?
Well, just a little bit about me. My name is Tiffani. I've been in the business since about 2006. I started off as a real estate paralegal, worked for a few years, and decided that I wanted to go to law school. So I continued to work during the day as a real estate paralegal and went to law school at night. So it was definitely a tough few years of my life. But I finished up in December of 2013. I took the February bar in 2014 and received passing results on the first time at the end of May. And the beginning of June, I opened up the Hawes Law Firm. So
awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. So working, as a paralegal, you kind of know all the ins and outs of real estate. You pretty much do the whole process. It's just kind of overseen by the attorney. So that allowed me to open up and do my own thing as soon as I got out of law school. So that's what I've kind of been doing since 2014. My little small firm is growing, thanks in part to Sharina and the Real Estate Gurus.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, I am extremely happy for you. Most people do not get a chance to experience the type of success that you have right after taking the test. So congratulations again on that. I'm glad that your partnership with the Real Estate Gurus is going well. I actually, hopefully, will have a deal for you to be closing soon. We just put it on a property last night, and so we put you on a contract as our real estate attorney. So hopefully they'll sign it and send it back today.
Well, congratulations to you and your buyer. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you all.
Thank you. All right, so let's jump right into the interview. Tell us, what is the role of the attorney in the real estate transaction?
So the role of the attorney in a real estate transaction depends on whether or not it's a cash transaction or if it's a transaction that's being financed by a lender. So if there is a lender involved, then our role is to represent the lender to make sure that the property is free and clear of all liens. So the lender doesn't want to loan a buyer, let's say an average loan amount of $150,000 or $200,000, if that money is not protected. And so what they do is they place a lien on someone's property. So in the event that the borrower does not make their mortgage payment, their collateral is that property. So if that property has liens on it that weren't cleared before closing, then now the lender, their money is kind of up in the air. It's dependent upon, all these other lien holders. So we are hired to make sure that the property has no lien and that the lender is protected when they're loaning the purchaser that money. Now, in a cash transaction, we're removing the lender, and now I represent either the buyer or the seller. In any instance, in order to issue title insurance, we have to make sure that the property is free and clear of liens. So primarily in any real estate transaction, that is our role. Our role is to look at the legal aspects of the file, make sure that, if somebody has a federal tax lien or, a FIFA, if somebody failed to pay one of their contractors, to make sure all of that stuff gets resolved prior to or on the day of closing so that the purchaser, the lender, and all the parties in that transaction are happy with the product that they're getting.
Excellent. So I have a question because I am licensed in both Illinois and Georgia. So my audience is typically from both Chicago and Atlanta. And in Illinois, the attorneys handle the negotiations after the contract is signed. So once the contract is signed, we send it for attorney review, and then any further negotiations pretty much goes through the attorney at that point. Is it the same in Georgia?
It is not the same in Georgia. So the closing attorney is not involved in any of the negotiation process unless someone hires a third-party attorney to do that. So we, in a real estate transaction, primarily are only here for the title purposes, making sure that the title is free and clear. The negotiation process is primarily handled between the agent. Now, sometimes we may have to step in and kind of mediate a situation so that all parties are aware, what happens if a contingency part of the contract is not met. And so we may give advice on that. But what we do not do is get into the negotiation process. That's primarily handled solely by the real estate agent in a transaction. And if no real estate agents are in the transaction, it's solely handled by the two parties. And it's just something that they have to figure out. Now, we will give a little guidance, because we've been doing this for so long, but we kind of try and stay out of that because we don't want to be liable for anybody making a decision that, they shouldn't have made or they should have made.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, is the attorney also the title agent? How does that work?
Yeah, so in Georgia, you're required to close in front of an attorney. But also, whenever a purchaser gets financing, the lender and the purchaser themselves are going to want to get title insurance. So then we have to become licensed title insurance agents. So we go through a title insurance company. They vet us. They check our resume. They check our references. They check our background check. They check all of these different items. They make sure that we know what we're doing. And then we become a title insurance writer for that title insurance company, along with being a licensed Georgia attorney. So as a real estate attorney, you can be licensed, by the state bar, but you can't get any business from any lender or anybody if you're not a licensed title insurance agent, because nobody wants to purchase property or give a loan for property without getting title insurance.
Okay, and can you explain to us what exactly is title insurance and how much does it cost?
So title insurance, both owners or a lender's policy, is basically an insurance policy that protects the lender's interest in a property or a purchaser's interest in a property. So if a lender is giving $100,000, they want to know that if something came up on that title that was missed at closing, that their interest in the property would be protected. So much like a car accident, if you get in a car accident, the insurance policy, replaces the car or pays for any damage or attorney fees or, depending on the policy that you have. Well, title insurance kind of works the same way. As an attorney, we, check the title to make sure that it's free and clear of any liens. Well, sometimes something may be missed, or what we can't protect against is a deed that was fraudulently executed. So we look at the documents, make sure they're in order, but there's no way for us to tell whether or not somebody executed a deed and they didn't actually own that property. Stuff like that happens. And when stuff like that happens, the only way to protect yourself against that is to have an insurance policy. And that's why the lenders require it on every file. So oftentimes people will say, oh, well, I don't want the policy because you checked the title and everything was okay. Well, yeah, we did, but there's also things that can be missed. There's things that can be misfiled by the clerk of court. They file things by, last names or what have you. And if somebody files something the wrong way and it's missed by our title abstractor, or again, if there's a deed that's fraudulently signed, there's no way to protect against that. There's no way that I can do my job better than I did it the first time to find that item. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
The cost of the policy depends on the loan amount or the purchase price. So typically when you're purchasing a property and you're getting a loan, If you get a lender's policy and an owner's policy, you get a discounted rate. So the owner's policy is dependent upon the purchase price, while the lender's policy depends on the loan amount. And it's roughly a little less than, I think, $3 per thousand, but it just depends. And so when somebody contacts our office, we have a calculator, we put in the figures, and we let them know what that cost is depending upon what the purchase price or the loan amount is. But the cost is a one-time cost for your owner's title policy, and it's with you throughout the time that you own the property. So you'll never have to get it again when you own that property. And what I like to explain to people is a small fee to protect the huge investment that you're making in purchasing a property. And it's something that I would never purchase a property and not get it.
Absolutely. I agree. It is definitely a must have. Now, in addition to the title insurance fees, what other fees are incurred by the buyer?
So by the buyer, you have your typical closing costs that's related to our office. So the lender always wants to get something that's called a CPL, and it's in conjunction with the lender's title policy, and that fee is always $35. Then you have your third-party title abstracting company. That's the company that our office hires to go research the title and present the findings back to us. That cost depends on, where you close. So it can be as low as $100 and it can be as high as $200. So it's really within that range. And then the next fee primarily is your settlement fee, how much the attorney charges to do the process of the full closing. We have to clear liens, we have to, prepare documents and all of that. Now that fee can range from, I've seen it as low as $350 to as high as $650, and sometimes a little more. It just depends on who's closing it for you. So those are the fees that are associated with our office. Now you also have fees for recording, and that's based on the county. So there's always going to be transfer taxes, which is $1 per thousand, and there's always going to be intangible taxes if you're getting a loan, and that's $3 per thousand. And that is fees that must be paid in conjunction with every property if there's a loan, intangible, and every property period for transfer taxes.
Okay, excellent. So that gives us an idea of what kind of fees the buyer will be incurring. Does a seller ever encounter attorney fees for the closing?
Sometimes in short sale transactions, there's always an additional attorney fee for the seller. If the seller is giving closing costs to the buyer that's negotiated through the contract, they end up paying some fees. In our office, we don't charge junk fees. That's what I like to call them, to the seller. But oftentimes in other firms, it's just a practice that's practiced by many attorneys. I'm not downplaying it. But they'll charge wire fees, or if there's a lot of liens that's on the property, they may charge the seller a lien fee for researching and having to find out whether or not they attach to the property. And so those are some fees that the seller can, look forward to when they're selling their home. Their fees primarily are oftentimes the real estate agent's commission. And then a lot of times the seller gives the buyer maybe a home warranty at closing. Those are the fees that are typically associated with a seller in a real estate transaction.
Okay, excellent. So that's good news for the seller there. And so then my final question would be, what actually happens at the closing table?
Well, fun happens in my closing table. So at the closing table, that means that the buyer's file has made it through the process, right? That means that title's been checked. That means that the lender has gotten all their conditions satisfied. And now this is where the purchaser is purchasing their property and the seller is selling their property. So at the closing table, there's a stack of documents. If it's cash, it's only a few documents. If it's a loan, you're looking at about approximately, 100 to 150 documents that have to be signed. And so that's yes, it's a lot. And more so on the purchaser side than the seller. The seller only has a few documents that they need to sign. But that's where the signing happens. And so what I like to explain to my buyers, because it can be intimidating looking at a stack of papers that are, pretty high. I always put the most important documents in the front of the package so that once we get through those, it's all about signing and kind of getting through the process so that they can get to their happy ending of purchasing their property, holding their keys, and taking pictures with their real estate agent so it can go on social media. But some of the important documents that we're talking about are your note, for instance, making sure that your interest rate is correct, making sure that your payment is correct, the settlement statement, making sure the numbers are there, making sure that if the seller said they were giving you $3,000 in closing costs, that you're receiving $3,000 in closing costs. We want to go over the security deed, because what a purchaser needs to know that in the event that, you don't make your mortgage payment, that security deed is what protects the lender's interest and gives them the right to foreclose on you if you don't pay your mortgage. So we kind of want to explain that to the purchaser so that they understand what they're getting into. And most people know what they're getting into, but I still like to kind of go over that. Then the remaining part of the package is what I like to call junk docs. So these are documents that can't be negotiated with the lender. You can't read them and cross things out and decide that you don't want to agree to this or you don't want to agree to that. If you want to get this money from the lender, then you pretty much are signing your name and moving forward to the end of the closing. So that is pretty much what you can expect. And then, like I said, the happy ending is once that last document is signed, the lender is satisfied with how the documents were signed, then everything is authorized, everything is final. The buyer gets to leave with their keys, and the seller hopefully gets to leave with the check.
Excellent. Awesome. That's always my favorite part. Cutting of the check.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Man, you have given us so much information today. It's really going to help answer a lot of questions for our listeners and just help to give them a better idea of what the process is once the contract is complete and we've submitted the file to their attorney, and actually what the attorney's role is in the process. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you think a first-time home buyer should know about what the attorney does, or, purchasing a house, or what to expect? Anything else that you'd like to share?
Just for the purchasers or even a seller in a transaction, you want to make sure that you are working with professional, knowledgeable agents, real estate agents who have a team behind them that's backing them and supporting them, because you want to work with somebody who's going to get you through this process and get you to the product that you ultimately want. This can be a very emotional process where, what you thought you want and you end up you can't get it for whatever reason. And so you just want to make sure that you have people backing your real estate agent, good professionals like real estate attorneys or good lenders, to make this process as easy as possible for you as a purchaser or a seller. Because oftentimes a lot of people get their feelings hurt in this industry. You watch HGTV and they make it seem like it's so easy. But in reality, there's a lot of different components that are part of a real estate transaction. And so you want to make sure that you're dealing with professional, knowledgeable people who deal with professional and knowledgeable people to kind of make sure that you're at the top of the list, and that your needs and wants are a top priority for them, and that they can get you what you need, because you don't want to miss out on a house that you could have got if you were messing with unprofessional and unknowledgeable agents. So that is my advice to anybody. And so if you are out here and Sharina is your agent, just know that she's backed by an awesome real estate attorney who's been doing this for a long time. And I kind of like things to be done the right way all the time. And if something's not done right, I want to correct it immediately. But that would be my advice to any purchaser or seller.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. If there are any real estate agents listening, or anybody that's in the process of purchasing a home in the Atlanta metro area, how can they reach you?
Well, you can always find me on social media. So I'm a big social media person, Tiffani Hawes on Facebook or at Hawes Lawyer on Instagram. You can also look at my website, www.thehaweslawfirm.com. Or you can just Google me. You know, the internet makes it so easy to find people or to get in contact with them. And I am all out there. So if you want to find me, you definitely can find me just by a simple Google search. But Sharina, I appreciate you having me and giving me the opportunity to kind of speak to your listeners so that they can be educated on the real estate process.
No problem. Again, thank you for agreeing to come on the show today. Your information will be on the podcast website. So if anybody is looking and is having trouble finding her on the internet, you can find her on the replay page for realestateconnect.live. All of her contact information will be there. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to her, shoot her an email, or speak to someone in her office.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Real Estate Connect podcast. Don't keep us a secret. Tell a friend to tell a friend and step your real estate game up.